My husband's estate of $80 million as well as this house will be passed down to me. We don't have any children, so everything is mine. My sister-in-law speaks with such triumph. And my name is Emma, a 45-year-old part-time worker. My husband and I have two sons, a senior and a sophomore in high school. My eldest son is taking the college entrance exam this year. He aspires to be a lawyer and has been studying diligently. He has wanted to be a lawyer since he was a small child, possibly influenced by my older brother Oliver. My brother is a lawyer, and about a few years ago, he established a law firm and even had a few lawyers. My eldest son, who had grown up watching my brother do this, loved to study and always got good grades, even in elementary school. When my brother had heard that my eldest son wanted to be a lawyer, he was overjoyed and encouraged him. My eldest son told my brother whenever they meet, "I will be a lawyer like you, uncle." My brother chuckled as he responded, "Hurry up and become a lawyer and follow in my footsteps." When my brother, who was married but had no children, came to visit us, he gladly plays with my sons and spoils them. My brother's wife was 10 years younger than him. She was an eccentric, or rather a difficult woman who never visited our house, so we never really spoke to her. My brother and I lost our parents when we were young. So when I was about to get married, my brother took place as a parent, and after I married, he married as well. My husband and I were relieved when we knew that my brother was planning to marry a young woman. But when we actually met his fiancée, I was surprised at how grumpy she looked. We were expecting a happy faces because she was about to marry my brother, but she looked at us with a sulky look. I said, "You two are great together," in front of my brother and his fiancée, but I told my true feelings when I returned home and was alone with my husband. I was curious as to why she appeared so unhappy after the marriage was finalized. My husband seemed to agree with me and responded concernedly. She wasn't a particularly pleasant bride. It can't be helped what we care. My brother married his 10-year younger fiancée. Shortly before they got married, my brother bought a house, so my husband and I took our children and visited them to celebrate. The house was magnificent and astonished me, as expected of my brother because he runs a law firm. But we did not see my sister-in-law, so my husband jokingly said to my brother, "Has your wife already left you?" My husband was obviously joking, but seeing my brother's stern expression, my husband and I became nervous. According to my brother, whenever there is something, sister-in-law returns to her parents' house. Today was their mother's birthday, so she is staying over to celebrate. My husband's shoulders slumped, thinking he had said a bad joke. Suddenly, my brother asks us with a straight face, "If I ever can't have children, can I adopt one of your children?" I thought my brother was joking, saying something like that, but he looked serious. I couldn't answer his unexpected suggestion, but my husband laughed and replied, "We don't know what the future holds, so let's discuss it when it happens, okay? If you are okay with our children, you are free to adopt whichever you want." My husband didn't seem to take it seriously and dismissed it, but I was concerned about the adoption, and more importantly, that my brother and his wife were not getting along. It wasn't my place to intervene because it was their problem, but I was concerned. After that, when we visit my brother's house, or he come over to our house, it was always just him. My sister-in-law never showed up. My brother also never mentioned her, so I avoided asking him about her. They had been married for more than 10 years, and I have almost been forgotten about her existence. This year, my eldest son was accepted into his dream law school. My brother brought up about adoption again. When he came to our house to celebrate my son, like I said before, "Would you allow me to adopt either of your kids?" he asked. My brother and his wife were unable to have children, and so he asked the question once more. They had just gotten married the last time we discussed it, so there was no sense of hurry, but this time my brother seemed serious. Nonetheless, my husband appeared to take it lightly and responded quickly, "Would you prefer to have our eldest son since he aspires to be a lawyer?" My husband said it so simply, but I was cautious, because it is a major life-changing decision for our sons. Though they were going to be adopted, they would be with my brother. It is their uncle, so my sons would be fine, but I was worried about my sister-in-law. I was concerned that she would mistreat my son, who were not her biological child, so I asked my brother, "Is your wife in favor of adopting?" My brother replied with a sour smile, "Don't worry about her. We've already discussed it." I was relieved to hear that they had already discussed it, but I couldn't make up my mind right away, so I decided to discuss it with my two sons and then make a decision. They are already in high school, so I wanted them to make their own decisions. We didn't go any further that day, but a few days later, I got a call from my brother's lawyer's office. They said he had collapsed. I rushed into the hospital. I found the staffs from the law firm waiting for him with worried expressions. My brother had a stroke at work and was rendered unconscious. After I arrived, the law firm staff left. They also said that they couldn't reach my sister-in-law. I called the landline, but she didn't answer, and I didn't have her cell phone number. My husband and my second son later arrived, but I really couldn't reach my sister-in-law. My second son eventually discovered a smartphone among my brother's belongings. We unlocked it and began looking up for her number. She answered angrily when I called using that phone. "I told you not to call again. I will sue you." I began to speak while she was yelling in a terrible tone. "It's Emma, Oliver's sister. My brother passed out and was taken to the hospital." Then she started talking gently when she realized it's me on the phone. "I'm so sorry, I thought it was Oliver. You said he collapsed?" I told her about my brother's condition and which hospital he was taken to, but she responded happily. "I can't go to the hospital right now because I have things to do, but please notify me as soon as you hear anything." She then hung up the phone. I wondered if she had more important things to do now, even her husband is sick. Now that we know my sister-in-law cannot be any help, we decided to take care of my brother. Since my eldest son had finished his university entrance exams, and he was relaxing at home most of the time, he visited my brother every day on my behalf. My brother never regained consciousness and remained in critical condition, but my sister-in-law never called nor visited the hospital. About a week after my brother was hospitalized, I called my sister-in-law again. She answered the phone quickly and gleefully. "What's the matter? Did he die?" I wanted to yell at her for being so rude, but I responded quietly. "He is still alive. Why don't you visit the hospital?" She retorted as if she irritates me while I hold back my rage. "I'm not a doctor, nor am I a spiritual healer. There's nothing I can do for his recovery." I became even more enraged by her demeanor, so I hung up the phone. I began to suspect that my brother wanted to adopt one of my sons because he had given up on having children with his wife. I think they weren't getting along. When my brother's marriage was finalized, I asked him how they'd meet, and he said they met through a marriage counseling agency. Maybe my sister-in-law married him because he was a lawyer and she wanted to have a good life. This thought enraged me even more, but when I mentioned it to my husband, he said something even more crueler. If Oliver dies in this situation, his wife will inherit the entire estate, since they don't have any children. So my brother came to celebrate my eldest son the other day and spoke to us about adoption. Maybe it was because he was thinking about his inheritance. I wish I could have decided at that time, but there was nothing I could do. After my brother left that day, I casually mentioned it to my two sons, and my second son told me that he would be happy to be adopted. Unlike my eldest son, my second son has no goals at the moment. He appears to believe that if he is adopted by Oliver, he will have an easy life. I expected the first son, who looks up to his brother, to want to be adopted as well, but the answer surprised me. "I don't want to be adopted, because as the eldest son, I will take care of you, Mom and Dad." I was overjoyed, but I also knew that my eldest son, who aspired to be a lawyer, was the right one to be adopted by. I was disappointed that I can't complete the adoption process on behalf of my unconscious brother. I do not want my brother's inheritance, but I also do not want to give even a penny of his property to my sister-in-law, who appears to be awaiting his death. I could only hope for my brother's recovery, but he never recovered. My brother passed away a few days later, and I had no choice but to contact my sister-in-law. "My brother recently passed away. Can we do a funeral?" My sister-in-law, who had been waiting the news of my brother's death, responded cheerfully. "Everything is up to you. Please do not appoint me as a pallbearer. I don't want to deal with any formalities." When I was about to lose it, she quickly hung up the phone. After all, my husband and I planned the funeral. Staffs from the law firm helped us in a variety of ways. My husband was also concerned about the firm's future, but my brother had taken care of that. Though my brother was the firm's representative lawyer, he delegated management to someone he trusted, so the law firm as a corporation will continue to operate without a problem. Many people came to my brother's funeral, and so many wreaths were brought that they couldn't fit it in the hall. Then I realized how wonderful my brother was once again. My son also assisted at the funeral. But when my second son saw the presidents of major corporations, politicians, and others had also attended, he was really frustrated. I knew I should have been adopted. I had no idea how amazing he was. My husband and I both felt we could kind of understand his sorrow. I was the pallbearer, but no one asked why my sister-in-law wasn't there, and no one mentioned it. I wondered if we were the only ones who knew my brother had married. My brother and his wife did not have a wedding. Instead, they only went on their honeymoon, so even the relatives may have missed it. If this was going to happen, I almost wish they had never married. No need of a wife who does not attend of her husband's funeral. And I regret not allowing him to adopt my second son sooner, because I believe she would take all of my brother's estates. With the help of the law firm staffs, my brother's funeral was completed. I invited everyone to my brother's house for a meal and to thank them. My brother will be able to rest in peace because of all of you. We were all very sad. That's when my sister-in-law appeared, wearing a flashy pink coat. I addressed her as if she had planned to arrive just as the funeral wrapped up. After all this time, why did you come here? With a big smile on her face, she speaks loud so that everyone could hear. My husband's estate of $80 million, as well as this house, will be passed down to me, his wife. We don't have any children, so everything is mine. For some reason, when she said it triumphantly, my brother's subordinates burst out laughing. We looked at them confused, unsure why they were laughing. My sister-in-law glared and yelled at them. "What exactly are you laughing about? You're so impolite." While smirking, one of the lawyers responded, "We know that you're officially divorced. We all knew the result of your divorce settlement the day before he collapsed." When I first heard this fact, I exclaimed, "What? You were divorced?" I looked over my sister-in-law's face and saw her staring at them, who had just said the truth with the most terrifying expression ever. When she clenched her teeth, the other lawyer started talking. "I also heard that you were charged alimony in conjunction with your divorce. Because your affair caused a divorce, it is inevitable." My sister-in-law yelled, glaring at the lawyer who said it. "I'm not required to pay alimony, am I? I no longer have anyone to pay." She spoke mockingly, but there was no way she could compete with a legal expert, and she was quickly retorted, "The right to alimony will also be inherited, so you will have to pay it to Emma. She's the inheritor." Then I realized for the first time that I was my brother's sole inheritor. If their divorcement was finalized and our parents are gone, so I'm all that's left. She seemed to realize this too and looked at me with a horrified expression, causing me to step back. But she seems unconvinced and began yelling once more. "Don't I get half of the estate now that divorcement is settled?" A dismayed-looking lawyer responds. "Didn't Oliver give you money when the divorce was finalized? I have a receipt certificate." He also purchased the house before the marriage, so it is not the subject to property division. I enjoyed watching her being lectured by the lawyers regardless of what she said. She seemed to recall something and shouted while laughing a little, "There's the life insurance, I should still be the beneficiary." She impressed me with her attitude in a situation where everyone around appeared to be her enemy. She said she changed the beneficiary of Oliver's life insurance to herself. However, the lawyer was also quick to deny about the life insurance. Oliver is a firm man, so I think he changed it when the divorce was finalized. I searched my brother's valuables and discovered the life insurance policy. When my sister-in-law saw this, she took the life insurance policy from me and looked impatiently at the beneficiary, but dropped her shoulders in disappointment. When she returned the certificate to me, I noticed that the beneficiary was me. My sister-in-law, realizing she was getting nowhere, yelled out her true feelings without thinking. "I married a lawyer because I thought he is wealthy, but I've only got a little money. In addition, I have to pay alimony. This is a huge mistake." With a grimace, the lawyer replied to her. Oliver said same thing. He said he shouldn't have come for the advice of a marriage counselor. He bemoaned the fact that he had made a huge mistake. My brother had never said anything like that to me, but he had always been truthful with his co-workers and subordinates. Unable to refute anything, my sister-in-law rolled her back and left my brother's house. Later on, she will have to pay the alimony in installments, but she didn't have a job. She began looking for a job quickly, but she has never worked seriously before and quit immediately. She re-registered to the marriage counseling agency and looked for a wealthy man in order to make quick money. And she found a wealthy man, told him she needed money for marriage, and cheated him out of his money. But the man caught on right away and reported her to the police. She was arrested for marriage fraud, according to the lawyer who works in my brother's law firm. To be honest, no alimony was ever paid to me, and when I went to see the lawyer about it, the story came up. In dismay, the lawyer told me, now that she has been apprehended, alimony payments may be impossible to obtain for the foreseeable future. Alimony is not something I am interested in. I was more interested in seeing her suffer a terrible fate. I believe my brother would agree, so I would like the police to investigate thoroughly her other crimes, etc., and charge her as a felon in court. My family moved into a house that my brother had left behind after unexpectedly inheriting his property. My husband and sons were ecstatic to be able to live in a big house after previously living in an apartment. My eldest son is studying law harder than ever before. He observed his brother's colleagues and subordinates lawyers, arguing with his sister-in-law, which made him yearn to be a lawyer. Though he was never adopted by, I hope he will carry on my brother's legacy and become a great lawyer like him. Only my second son is upset and disappointed that I inherited my brother's entire estate. He claims, "To be honest, I wish I was adopted by uncle so I could have inherited everything." The second son smiled, half-jokingly.
Are you ready for the move? My husband, approaching me with a look that seemed to say I was no longer needed. After treating me like an ATM, now he's trying to kick me out of the house. Why do I always have to suffer like this? Swearing revenge, I readily agreed to leave the house. But there was a strategy behind this, aimed at getting back at him. My name is Carolyn, and I'm 46 years old. I work as a municipal employee at the City Hall. After graduating from a community college, I dedicated myself to my job, and before I knew it, I had reached 25 years of service. I married my husband, Michael, when I was 25. It was a shotgun wedding, and we had a boy the following year. Our son has now become a college student. He moved out to attend a university in another state, living on his own. To be honest, our marriage hasn't been very good. Since our son left, we hardly talk, and our relationship has grown even colder. Especially since my husband's domineering attitude has gotten worse, reminiscent of our early marriage days. It seemed like he had restrained himself after our son was born, but his true nature began to resurface. It's become routine to be criticized for the dinners I painstakingly prepare, with comments like "this is bland" or "make it again." No matter how carefully I do the laundry or cleaning, I constantly hear, "Can't you even do household chores properly with an associate degree?" Or, "Why did I even marry such a foolish woman?" My husband graduated from a prestigious private university and works in sales at a major food trading company. He probably thinks that me, with my associate degree and government job, am not good enough for him. He often makes belittling remarks. I've voiced my concerns a few times about sharing household chores, saying, "Since we both work, can't we divide the housework?" But he insists, it's natural for the wife to do the housework. You get off work on time since it's a government job, and our son is grown up. So you should manage on your own. I countered, our son being grown up applies to you too. But that seemed to annoy him even more, leading him to say, "If you can't handle both, quit your job." He says to quit easily, but I have reasons why I can't. Our living expenses, mortgage, and our son's tuition fees are mostly covered by my salary. I've tried discussing this several times. Could you at least help with the mortgage or part of the tuition fees? However, he responded, "How I spend the money I earn is my business," and only contributed the bare minimum. We've had separate bank accounts since we got married, so I had no choice but to accept this arrangement. You'd think one might get used to such a marriage over 20 years, but recently something has been bothering me. My husband started asking me for money frequently, using various excuses. There's a family gathering at my parents' home. So what? I need to give some pocket money to my nieces and nephews, so can you chip in about $100? That was the beginning. While it's undeniable that family ties are important, it was suspicious that he wouldn't contribute himself. However, refusing would undoubtedly lead to being labeled a cold-hearted woman, so I complied. But from that day on, my dad got injured and has to be hospitalized. That's terrible. We should visit right away. No need for a visit, but can you afford $400 for a consolation gift? Or some distant relative apparently got married. A distant relative? From your father's side or your mother's side? Don't pry. I need about $300 for a congratulatory gift, so get it ready. Before I knew it, in addition to regular expenses, I was drained of tens of thousands by my husband. My distrust of my husband grew. Even though he continued to ask for money, I started to dodge and evade his requests. As a result, his mood worsened rapidly, and he began taking it out on me again. Don't you even want to do something for your in-laws? Every time he saw me, my husband would complain. Why do I have to put up with so much? Sometimes I felt like I was about to cry. Around the same time, I was also concerned about my husband coming home late. There were days when he would come home reeking of deodorant spray, and I even found women's earrings in his shirt pocket. The word affair was flashing in my mind. Coming home late, are you busy with work? I have various obligations like entertaining clients, unlike your cushy government job. His dismissal of my job, which I take pride in, saddened me. You just stare at a computer all day, right? Can't even tell if that's considered work. He would say, laughing mockingly. Don't mock me. There were times when I raised my voice in response. We started having more of these arguments. Why did he need to say such things? Especially when I'm the one covering our monthly expenses. I miss the early days of our relationship. He used to be so kind. I can't even remember what drew me to him and why I married him. Then one day, my bad feeling proved to be right. On a rare occasion when my husband came home early. You're home earlier than usual today. There's something I need to talk about. A talk? I asked, puzzled. Out of the blue, he said, get out of this house. Having suspected his infidelity, I asked, do you want to be with your lover? His response, you catch on fast, confirmed my suspicions. Women's intuition is truly frightening. According to him, his lover was the hostess of a snack bar they often used for business entertainment, a woman who, unlike me, was charming, good-natured, and beautiful. She really understands me. Apparently, she has a child from a previous marriage, so we'll live here together, he said. Sharing details I didn't want to hear. I told my husband, give me one night to think about it, and locked myself in my room. From behind me, his cold words hit, leave as soon as you can. After being treated like an ATM and now being kicked out of the house. The money I was drained of must have been funneled to his mistress. His late returns under the guise of business entertainment might have been lies, meeting his lover instead. Why must I always be the one to suffer like this? Fed up with my husband's unreasonable laziness, I decided to enact a plan. The next morning. Are you done packing for the move? To his sarcastic question, I coolly replied, I'll be out today. My refreshing demeanor surprised him, but he was pleased, saying, finally, I can escape this dreary life. It's better to have a beautiful woman in a home that's just for sleeping, even if it's plain. You lack flair. I'll take all my belongings with me. That's necessary. Otherwise, we can't start our new life. He said with a smug face. By we, he meant his mistress and himself. I told him as a condition for leaving the house, I want a divorce. I didn't want to end as a pitiful wife who easily acknowledged infidelity and just left. I'll divorce this man myself. I pulled out the divorce papers I had prepared for such an occasion. Imagining a future with his mistress, my husband, without hesitation, filled in the divorce papers, saying, consider it done. That afternoon, I packed my belongings and left the house. I feel liberated. My husband declared loudly enough to be heard at the entrance. His good mood and smirking were only for the moment. I submitted the divorce papers to the court, explained the situation to my colleagues, and took a few days off. Since this was all so sudden, I hadn't signed a lease for a new place yet. For the time being, I decided to stay in my son, Alex's place. My face must have looked refreshingly relieved after a long time. As my son greeted me with a relieved smile. It's finally over, isn't it? The real challenge starts now. I'm on your side, Mom. Thank you. The curtain rose on my revenge. A week later, a familiar number called. No doubt about it. It was my husband. Or rather, my ex-husband now. I initially ignored the calls, but they were so persistent that I had no choice but to answer. After taking a moment, I answered the phone only to hear my ex-husband, livid, ranting, "Hey. What do you think you're doing? Today was the end of the month. The day when various payments were due. What are you talking about? This month's payments. What do you mean? We're divorced, aren't we? Why would I have any obligation to pay? What? Indeed, there's no surprise in my ex-husband's outburst. This month, neither living expenses nor the mortgage had been paid from my salary. And the amount would be shocking. Our apartment was in an upscale residential area. Just the mortgage could cost thousands of dollars. How am I supposed to handle this amount? Your salary was. His voice trailed off in astonishment. I decided to explain everything from scratch. We were like separated within the house, so I didn't feel the need to explain. But I was promoted to a department head after being recognized for my achievements. Department head, not section chief. Since when? I think it was the year Alex entered high school. My salary is probably more than double yours. What? My ex-husband couldn't hide his shock at each revelation. I kept this a secret too, but I've been investing for educational funds since Alex was born. The assets are now worth hundreds of thousands. Having separate bank accounts from the beginning really helped. It saved me from you knowing about the money movements. Can't be. I continued calmly. I had thought about divorcing earlier, but I figured there was no point for him in giving up a convenient ATM. So I led my ex-husband to agree to the divorce willingly. I had played the part of a dutiful, obedient wife on purpose, giving him money to lead him on. I had told my son about the planned divorce well in advance and encouraged him to attend a university far away from home. All of this was part of the plan. After I explained everything, my ex-husband fell silent, unable to say anything. How does it feel to be countered by a wife you look down upon for being a community college graduate and working an easy government job? He probably never expected me to have such clarity. He seemed unable to retort. It's strange that he never questioned how we managed to live a middle-class lifestyle or better. Naturally, we are divorced now, so I have no obligation to make any payments, including for this month and henceforth. If you want, that apartment is in your name, isn't it? Shouldn't you be the one to pay the mortgage? Where are you now? Huh? I'm coming to pick you up, so tell me where you are, my ex-husband managed to say after a struggle. I even asked your office, but they said you're on a few days off and didn't know where you are. How am I supposed to live now? He muttered under his breath. And for a good reason, as I had arranged with my workplace and son to disappear from my ex-husband's radar. Of course, I had also informed my parents and relatives. It seems my ex-husband was now at a dead end. You could just earn your own living. Though, with your debts, you won't be able to live as lavishly as before, I said coldly. And I could hear him gasp. How did you know? A private investigator can find out easily. Apparently, my ex-husband had been squandering most of his salary on gambling. He was in debt, and I had been covering the repayments with the living expenses I paid every month. You're foolish to even lavish gifts on your mistress. I'll return the words you once said to me. How could I have married such a fool? My relentless counterattack left my ex-husband speechless again. After a long silence, I was wrong, can't you come back? He suddenly asked in a soft voice. I was wrong about everything. I want to apologize, so please give me your address. I want to apologize in person, he lied. Trying to smooth things over. Since he still hadn't learned his lesson, I decided to reveal 2 more truths to my ex-husband. By the way, have you checked the mailbox? What's this all of a sudden? You haven't seen it yet, have you? There should be a bill for alimony. My ex-husband might not realize, but I never mentioned anything about an amicable divorce. Naturally, I have the right to demand alimony from him. There's one more thing. Is there still something else? Haven't you received a notice from his university? What notice? About the tuition fee withdrawal. What? Yes, I had asked my son to change the account for tuition fee withdrawals to my husband's name. The tuition fee for the upcoming semester will be withdrawn soon. Wait a minute. Let's talk this over calmly. I am perfectly calm. At least he didn't end up attending the same prestigious private university as my ex-husband, which is a relief in itself. My bright son worked hard and, despite my ex-husband's objections, managed to enroll in a more affordable national university in the countryside. Still, the tuition fee for just the first semester runs into thousands of dollars. The deadline for the alimony is also approaching, so please make the transfer soon. Please, have mercy. Why don't you stop this disgraceful behavior? I'm done associating with you. With that, I hung up the phone. Later, through the grapevine, I heard that my ex-husband, having lost my support, was forced to sell the apartment we lived in. He's now living in a dilapidated share house in a building that's 50 years old. Desperate without the financial support, my ex-husband frantically tried to reach out to me multiple times, hoping to rekindle our relationship. I don't know what kind of person his mistress was, but the fact that he didn't rely on her probably speaks volumes about her character. I also learned later that, to add insult to injury, my ex-husband was eventually abandoned by his mistress and left all alone. I had the detective agency investigate her as well. And surprisingly, it turned out she didn't have any children, contrary to what my ex-husband believed. He was the only one who was serious about the relationship. He was thoroughly played for a fool. After treating me like an ATM and then kicking me out of the house, I hope he reflects on his actions. Burdened with debt he accumulated himself and the alimony owed to me, he turned to his parents for help. But they couldn't forgive the terrible way he treated his wife and turned him away. Disowned by his parents, my ex-husband now has no one to turn to and is lost. As for me, I'm finally free from the hassle and leading a comfortable life. With the assets from my investments and the alimony from my ex-husband, I purchased a new apartment. On weekends, Alex comes over, and we enjoy some tea and study together. To my surprise, he aspires to be a public servant like me. It fills me with joy to see him studying hard for the National Civil Service exam, taking my advice to heart. I've returned to work and expressed my gratitude to my superiors and colleagues by distributing thank you sweets for their support. This ordeal has reaffirmed my belief that diligence and perseverance are always rewarded in the end. I plan to live by this principle moving forward.